Okay, well, good morning, everyone who can hear me. I just wanted to say again, my name is Ava Jones. I'm the communications specialist with the College of Information. I just want to thank you for joining as we all adjust to COVID-19 and social distancing. And I'm so glad that Pam could still join us. We look forward to everything that you have to say this morning. I just wanted to read a small piece about our Discovery Series, which the college hosts year-round, and it consists of prominent and impactful speakers from all industries in all three of our departments within the College of Information. So that would be information science, learning technologies, and linguistics. So the idea for the Discovery Series is, of course, to stimulate the exchange of ideas at the intersection of all three of our departments. And the Discovery Series lectures are recorded, and then they will be made available on our YouTube page after they are complete. Pam Dukes is an Olympian, a motivator, a life coach, an agile coach, and dynamic trainer and mother. Pam is an accomplished Olympic athlete, Stanford University alumna, who has worked in the IT industry for over 25 years. Now, since retiring from her sport, she has continued to excel as a leader, mentor, and public speaker. She is also has an innate ability to instantly connect with people and convey enthusiasm when she shares her life experiences. Now, working with Toyota Connected as an agile coach and trainer, she has made a life-changing discovery in a class called the Harada Method. This class revealed to her that she has hidden much of herself from others for years. It also introduced a new way to develop people, increase self-reliance, improve teams, and help them soar. As a part of her awakening, she discovered the meaningful connections between her life as an elite athlete and the Scrum framework. This breakthrough motivated her to become a certified Harada coach and trainer and teach others how to stop hiding, find their true voice, their passion, and achieve their goals. Pam, thank you so much for participating this morning. And we're so happy to have you as a part of the Discovery Series.
Thank you very much. That was a very glowing introduction. I appreciate that. I am going to share my screen now. There we go. All right, can you see my presentation? Yes?
Yes, I can see it looks good.
Okay, well, thank you. Again, thank you for that great introduction. And I would like to thank John Turner for inviting me for this event. And then I also want to thank Nigel Thurlow, who helped inspire me to make this discovery. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. The name of the presentation is called No More Hiding. Let's see. So as humans, we want deep and fulfilling relationships. To get those relationships, we want people to actually like us. But we worry that people may not like us for who we actually are. We worry on some level that we're unlovable and that there are things about us that people may not accept. And this causes us to hide. We end up hiding parts of us that we feel damage our quote unquote likability. And because we're hiding, people feel they can't truly get to know us. There are times when someone's trying to get to know you and they feel like you've got maybe a little bit distance or a wall, and that may prevent them from actually getting to know you better. Or if people actually take the chance and end up liking us, we find that we constantly worry about them now finding out the truth, that thing we're trying to hide that may change their opinions of us. Well, this is where I lived for a long time, and this is where we live. And I made this discovery a couple years ago, and I want to share that with you. So this is my history. As she mentioned, I am an Olympic athlete. Some people call me a big deal, I guess. I'm also a Stanford grad. And for those who are visual, I have the picture version. And if you see there on the left side, that is my freshman year at Stanford University, where I went to continue my track efforts and further shot. And let me just say that sweats are very forgiving, and I am not even close to being in shape in that picture. But as I continued to train and grow, I managed to become more of an athlete, get in better shape, and then eventually realize my dream of becoming an Olympic athlete. So you might find it a little hard to believe that I actually found myself hiding. So the question is, how did I get here? And what did I realize from this Harada training thing that we keep referring to? Well, before Harada training, I realized that I was minimizing my accomplishments, and I call myself the CMO, which I've coined, which means Chief Minimizing Officer. I didn't share my accomplishments, I didn't want to stand out, and I was concerned about what others thought about me. I avoided the limelight, and I can remember 2 specific examples before I actually took this training that stay in my mind. When I was actually training for the Olympic team after I graduated school, I didn't tell people I worked with that I was training for the Olympics. And you may ask yourself, why? Well, one thing I realized during that time, early before .com era, that companies were doing layoffs. And there's a big misconception about what it means to train for the Olympics. People think you have this big pot of money coming from somewhere and help support you, but that is not the case. And I worked full time throughout my track career, and I needed to. If I didn't have my job, I wouldn't have been able to support myself or complete the training. But I didn't tell my coworkers, and if you ask yourself why, the reason is because during that time they were doing layoffs periodically, and my big fear was they would look at my name on the list and say, oh, Pam's got that Olympic thing. Yeah, she doesn't need this job. And then they would put my name on the list. So to prevent that from potentially happening, I never told anybody that I was training. My other vivid memory was when I started a new job after I'd finished my track career, and once the internet started going and the search engines were out there. One of the worst things someone could tell me was that I looked you up on the internet. And I can still remember that fear I felt when they said that. And I would look them eye to eye and say, okay, let's make a deal. Can we just keep this amongst ourselves? Can you not tell anybody? Because I lived in fear that they would share my accomplishments. So once I finished the Harada training, I decided to do a root cause analysis, the 5 whys, on myself to figure out, why am I doing what I'm doing? So I asked myself, why am I minimizing my accomplishments? Well, the first reason was because I didn't want to stand out. Going deeper, it's because I didn't want to make others feel uncomfortable. And you may ask, well, how can you make others feel uncomfortable if you're talking about yourself? Well, one of the things that had a tendency to happen when I did share is that people put me up on a pedestal. And that's a dangerous place to be, because when people put you on a pedestal, on some level, they start to feel that you think you are better than they are. And when that happens, my final realization and my 5th why was that they would not want to be my friend. And I can distinctly remember in work situations where initially it's cool, and people would include me in things, and they'd invite me to happy hour and to lunches and so forth. But after a while, that started fading. And somehow in my brain, I connected that the reason they were distancing themselves is because they thought that I was better or special, and that maybe I was somehow dimming their light, so they decided not to include me. It's pretty powerful. I created this chart. This is actually showing what I think are the amount of hours I invested in my sport. At the very top, the hours highlighted in green are when I actually played basketball in high school. So I consider that somewhat of a cross-training. But one of the things Malcolm Gladwell stated in his book Outliers is that he feels there's this thing called the 10,000 hour rule. And what he means by that is, in order to achieve some sort of world-class level at something, you have to do deliberate practice and invest a significant amount of time. And I actually agree with that. Now, for me, it was almost about 8,000 hours that I invested before I actually became Olympian. And you know, there's some latitude with my estimates of how much time I'm training. There are probably times where I trained less, and probably times that I train more. But overall, I did train almost 10,000 hours in my sport. And for some reason, I woke up one day and decided, yeah, we're just going to wipe all that behind. We're not going to share that with people. And it puzzled me. Talked a little bit about Harada. The Harada Method, this is the book that was written and translated by Norman Bodek. Takeshi Harada created a method for training athletes. He was assigned to a school in Osaka, Japan, and it was a very depressed area. There was a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, and so forth. So he was assigned to be the track coach, and he decided to study Olympic athletes. So it kind of makes sense why I attached to it. And he came up with a method to train them, get them to believe in themselves, and to conquer their goals. The big magic for me in this method, and why it differs some from other goal-setting frameworks, is that you have a coach. And one thing I did, because I knew I was high maintenance, I realized that one coach wasn't going to do. So I actually set myself up with 5 coaches to help me hit my goal. One of the aspects of the Harada Method that I really like is it focuses on all of you. It's not just you working on one particular thing. You're trying to work on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you're also trying to do a service to others as well as yourself. It's not just you working on something. These are my forms. These are actually my forms that I filled out on my journey. Hopefully you can read that. But essentially what I said is you're setting a goal. We set a 3-month goal. And then you start going into some deep analysis as to why you want to do the goal. And you break up the goal on 4 tiers. You can see here, my first level was just to set a goal to do a training module to connect teamwork with the Scrum framework and to also deliver it to a large group of people. Ideally, my boss's training class, the Scrum the Toyota Way class. So for level 1, I wanted to share my presentation with the team I worked with at Toyota Connected. Level 2, they have something called Brews and News, and I'll show you a picture of that on the next screen, where they actually had sort of a happy hour on Thursdays at work, and they share different topics and subjects. And for one of those, I actually was interviewed because a lot of the people I worked with had no idea about my history, and they were stunned to find out that I had all these things that I had shared. The largest goal, as you can see in yellow, was for me to deliver it to a larger audience of at least 50 people. And I leave this up to show you some of the forms you fill out when you're figuring out your goal is you figure out why the goal is important to you. So you're not just figuring out what the benefit is for yourself, you're also looking at society, both tangible and intangible reasons why you feel like this is going to benefit you as well as society. So it requires a bit of thinking and concentration. It's not something you just whip through, fill out the forms, and then you jump into it. My supporting forms over here is where you set 6 focus areas. And again, we talked about mind, body, and spirit. So you'll see I have developing the actual coursework for my presentation. I've got things about my family, my spirit, which is very important, as well as, of course, health and fitness, as you can imagine. And the little boxes here around here talk about tasks and routines that you set up to help you achieve your larger goal. This is a picture of some of the things I've done in achieving my goal. The picture in the middle with the number 1 is me actually delivering that module in my boss's class. And then, as I mentioned, I worked with Toyota, so I went to their headquarters. And someone in the Harada Method training class heard me say what my goal was. And he was actually one of the sponsors for the DevOps Day conference, the Dallas portion. Very big conference. And he stood up and said, hey, you can come deliver your presentation to our conference once you get it done. And I realized I couldn't really say no at that point because he'd said it in front of everybody. So that's what I did. This is me down here in the center at that Brews and News, the happy hour I mentioned. And then I submitted my presentation as well as part of Agile Camp. Now I work with Scrum and Agile teams. And Agile Camp is the biggest conference that we have in the United States. So I decided I'm not just going to submit my talk to the local conference in Dallas. I want to go to headquarters. I want to go to Nike's headquarters because as an athlete, that's kind of where it all started. And that's where I aligned my vision to participate. They accepted my talk, and then I got to fly to Beaverton, Oregon. And I'm in the Tiger Woods Conference Center, which I thought was kind of a full circle moment for me. And they're actually doing an exercise for me that I learned in the Harada Method, and I conducted my presentation. Here you see with a group of girls, people locally have found out that I'm available for public speaking and things, so they invited me to their girls' conference. And this was pretty cool. Briar Hill had a beautiful day for the girls, where they paired the middle school team up with high schoolers, because these girls were getting ready to go to high school, and there's that fear and unknown about jumping from, 8th grade to 9th grade. So they actually got to spend some time with them and ask their questions, and I think it really helped them feel more comfortable about the transition going to high school. On the next slide, my first goal was to do that presentation. My second goal was to actually become a trainer of this method, because I realized this has changed my life. And part of my mission is to help others figure out what's important to them and help them achieve it. And then my third goal was to actually conduct classes and train people on the Harada Method, which is what I have done and I'm still doing. So after I went through this huge transformation, I've become the chief happiness or the chief Harada officer for my life. I am embracing my accomplishments. I stand up, I stand in the limelight, and my goal is to help others. I stopped saying no to opportunities, and people around me know that. So it's a little scary, because they will then contact me and say, hey, we need you to come and do this. And unless there's some physical reason why I can't, they know I'm going to come help them. So it helps everyone out. So in my research for setting my goal, I found this slide and this picture, and I realized that it's true. I think everyone has a superpower, but what James Owen says here was pretty powerful for me. One of the things I realized was that proper pride is saying you're good at something. But improper pride, you sort of cross the line when you start saying you're better than someone else. And somewhere in my brain, I had convinced myself that when I tell people I'm an Olympian or I graduated from Stanford, I was actually telling them I was better than them. And that's not my reality. My reality was just sharing my accomplishments. And then if for some reason that doesn't work out, or they decide they're going to distance themselves from me, there's not really anything I can do about that. That's their choice. In my training class, I created an exercise to show the attendees how some of them may also be hiding and have the same challenge. And what I did is I have these really big white labels on the table with the big magic markers. And I tell them, I want you to write your biggest accomplishment on that label and put it on your chest. So I took a label and I wrote Olympian there, and I put it on my chest, and I just stood there and I watched the people in the class. And first of all, it was hard for them to come up with their biggest accomplishment, which is a little sad. But bigger than that, I could see people cringing, having to wear it on their chest. And as we went around the room and spoke, I realized that for some, they were suffering from what I was suffering from, in that they felt they were bragging and they didn't feel right even sharing their biggest accomplishment, when all I did was ask them to do that. So there was an actual request, and it was still difficult for people to do. The interesting thing was I tried to see how long they could wear the label. I would keep mine on for the rest of the day, but as soon as I went to the next slide in class, they just took that thing off. They did not want to wear that label. So it's indicative of the same thing I went through. So this was my progression, and I'll just summarize this. I took the Harada class on May 9th and 10th of 2018, and then I achieved my goal pretty quickly. And then I mentioned that DevOps Day conference I went to speak to, and then the Agile Camp and the Beautiful You with the girls. I started teaching my classes in early 2019. And then at the DevOps Day conference here in Dallas, there was a lady there who listened and participated and invited me to Verizon's headquarters in Irving to come and participate in their DevOps Day and do the same presentation. And this was interesting because at some point I asked her, okay, how many people do you think I'll be speaking to? And she said, well, I think probably be about 30 or 40 live in front of you, but then we're going to do a kind of a live feed to our company. So it'll probably be a couple thousand. And I remember my eyes got big, and I told myself, okay, never ask them how many people you're speaking to, because that's just information you don't need to know. So that was a nice milestone for me. And then I went to some of the local conferences here in Dallas. They called the meetups. And while I was at this one, 2 different people from 2 different companies heard my presentation and then asked me to come and deliver the same presentation for them, which I did. And then kind of the culmination of my presentations, my boss, Nigel, who does a lot of conferences and speaking engagements, they had contacted him and asked him for a woman speaker. And he said my name instantly popped up into his head, and they invited me to Paris to do my presentation. I'll say that again, Paris, as in France. So end of last year, I took my son and I actually delivered a presentation in Paris based on kind of my transformation and what I'd done. So that was pretty powerful. So why did this work for me? From the first exercise, I struggled. I realized that this is really difficult for me. Before you even get to class, you're asked to make a list of some things. And essentially, you're trying to figure out kind of what you're good at or what you're proud of. And there's a certain number you're supposed to hit. And I remember after a few days, I wrote my boss and just said, do we really have to do this number? Can we do part of it? How much does it really matter? And from that moment, I realized I was struggling to do something and I hadn't even been to the class yet. So I knew there was a problem. While I was in class, I could see myself rating myself in different characteristics and looking at people I worked with and cared about. And their scores were so much higher than mine, it was ridiculous. And then I thought, okay, what is wrong with me? Why have I lost faith in myself? And why am I rating myself so low for these exercises? So within that class and shortly after, I realized, okay, there's something wrong. And by golly, I'm going to fix this. And that's exactly what I set out to do. As I completed it, I also realized that we all have a level of fear. We've got that little voice in our head, the gremlins that tell you you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or what are people going to say? And I also realized that the only way we really grow is to silence the gremlins and to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. I've been doing that ever since I've started this process. And then I realized, okay, now that I know how to do it, I need to help other people. As I mentioned, one of the things I've been able to develop is a skill where I can figure out what someone else's superpower is if I'm with them long enough. And the funny thing about that is when you tell someone that they're exceptional or good at something, what do you think they do? They start discrediting what you've said. Oh no, you're not right. I'm not that good. Other people are better. And then I realized, okay, somehow I've got to find a way to break through because I want people to actually be able to stand in what makes them great and to share it with others. So these are some of the lessons I've learned over my life and through this process. You want to listen to people who tell you you're good at something because I feel like there are special angels on earth, whatever you want to call them, but they can spot greatness. And if they're taking the time to tell you you're great at something or you should pursue something, you should actually do it. We spend time thinking, okay, they're not right, or how could they know, or what are their credentials? And it's crazy. So if I can give you one lesson for today, it's please listen to people who tell you you are great at something or you could be great at something and actually try exploring that. You want to surround yourself with smart people, people who will lift you up and believe in you. At some point, I think we all find ourselves around negative people, and it creates such a weight on us. It's very hard to carry that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we all want to be liked. We want to be part of groups. We want to be included. So you might find yourselves having to make the decision about, do I need to let this relationship go or this group, or is it important to me enough to stay in it? But you have to ask yourself, if they're not helping you or lifting you up, it's probably not something you want to pursue. We've got to learn how to be grateful, and this is big, and probably especially considering where we are right now. Many of us have the ability to participate into this workshop right today, or even work from home, and not everybody has that capability. So we really want to stop and think about the things we have to be grateful for and carry those with us every day. We want to keep learning. I remember distinctly there were parts of my career where I just stopped. I didn't really read. I didn't go to training classes or conferences. I learned things on the job, but that was it. I really didn't do more to help develop myself and to help excel. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if I was just tired or I just thought I'm smart enough. I don't need to know anymore, which is crazy because that's not true. But I would encourage you on some level, if you can read, if you can listen to podcasts, anything you can do to continue learning will work in your favor. You want to help others. As I mentioned with the Harada Method, you want to serve yourself as well as others. And for those who actually participate in this, you realize when you're helping someone else, the feelings you get from that, you can't find those anywhere else. And just to know that you're making a difference in someone else's life, I'm not sure that it gets any better than that. So I would highly encourage you to do that. You got to work on becoming optimistic. I know I'm pretty super hyper optimistic. I wake up, I feel good, I go to work, I bring my attitude with me, and I carry it all the way through the day until the evening, until I wake up till the next day. And I know it doesn't happen instantly. It's almost like a muscle. It's something you have to work on. But I highly recommend that you work on it because you'll find your outlook on life will change. And then you may have opportunities that come your way as a result of your attitude and the way you carry yourself in the world. You want to believe in yourself and you want to find coaches. And I can't stress this enough. Mentors, coaches, and not just one. One of the things I've realized too was after I finished sports, I had mentors here and there, but I really didn't continue to have someone to bounce ideas off of, to get ideas from. And I'm really glad that I found that in Nigel and the people he's surrounded me with. And they actually do speak greatness into me. In fact, I think yesterday he sent me a message telling me I would be great today and I would do well. And to show his support, I know he's online actually listening as well. So you really want to find those people who are there to help you. And it may require that you actually pay a little bit or invest in them. But this is not something I recommend you push to the side because it is really important. It's not just athletes that needs coaches, it's people that need coaches. And then you want to go ahead and you want to set goals. And you got to figure out a way to achieve them. The Harada Method is one way. I will be offering training. So if that's something you're interested in or you're interested in coaching, I put myself out there as I'm available for that. But you definitely want to have something you're working towards. It changes your outlook. And I think it helps you make leaps and bounds in your life that you might not do if you hadn't set those goals. So this is a picture of some of the people I follow, I've studied, that have influenced me and that have helped me. And you'll see I mentioned Nigel's name. His name is right up there in red in the center. And then Professor Turner, his name is also in red there because he's the reason I'm here. If you're looking for inspiration, I would invite you to take a picture of the screen or maybe do a screenshot because you never know who you'll listen to or read that will give you a little spark of something that you can take and carry with you in your life. This is my list and it continues to grow. This court. But I would suggest that you actually make your own list too, because I think at some point we all become role models and someone may come up and ask you, hey, I'd like to learn or grow. I need some more things in my life. I want some additional names I don't know of. Do you have any ideas? So this is a perfect opportunity to get some names from other people as well as create your own list. So I mentioned that I do offer classes. I'll be offering an online class probably within the next couple of weeks. And if you're interested, I would just say send me an email. That's my actual email address. And I know we have students online, do offer student discounts. And I will give away 2 scholarships for my next class. So if you can write me and tell me why you feel this class is for you, what it is you feel you need to conquer, maybe what are the things, the roadblocks that are keeping you from getting where you need to be. And for the best 2 answers I receive, I will provide a scholarship for my class. The money I raise from my classes, I actually am using it for student scholarships, if you can believe that. At my high school, my name is known in Freehold, New Jersey. And so what I've done is I've created 2 scholarships there. One is a track and field scholarship that kind of makes sense, but then the other one is a scholarship for students in need. There are people everywhere, students who are doing really well in school and need a little help to get to that next level. And while these are not full scholarships, I think the most I've given to one student may be $300 or $400. But one of the things I realized is by receiving that scholarship, even though it's not a huge scholarship, what it is, it's an indication to that student that I believe in them and that I have faith that they can use the money and work towards their education and actually be successful. And sometimes that's all you need, to know that someone actually believes in what you're trying to achieve. And so that's my little way of trying to pay it forward and help the school and the location for the place that helped get me going. If you're not interested in class, maybe you just need some help or coaching, you can go ahead and send me an email as well. I'm open to seeing that and helping. And we are at 27 minutes, so we have time. So I have bonus content, and what I usually do at the end of my presentations is I offer the opportunity to share a story. The top 2 stories that get selected are how I made the Olympic team and how I got a coach fired. I'm going to give you the Olympic team story because I think that one would be most suitable today. So I'm not sure if you're aware how the Olympics work and the trials work, but in my particular sport, in track and field, they take 3 people in each event. So if you're a high jumper, they take the top 3 high jumpers at the Olympic trials. Or if you're a javelin thrower, they take the top 3. And the first Olympic trials I went to, I was completely nervous. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't do well. The next Olympic trials I went to, I placed 4th. And I can tell you, you would rather be any number in the world other than 4th, because 4th means you just missed it. The top 3 go, and they kind of give you a pat on the back and say, nice try, you'll get them next time. So in '92, I was at the Olympic trials in Atlanta. My parents were there. And I remember I was in 3rd place going into the last round of shot put throws. And there was someone, we'll call her Susan. Susan had made the last Olympic team in the shot, and on her final throw, she moved, I think, into 2nd place, which moved me into 4th place, which, as I mentioned, means you do not get to go. And I remember it was devastating, and I managed to hold myself together, get to the drug testing room, because of course we're drug tested, and I was filling out the paperwork, and the girl who won the shot and the discus, her name is Connie Price Smith, she came over to me and she put her hand on my shoulder. And I remember thinking, just hold it together, don't say anything, because I knew I was going to burst into tears. And so she said, Pam, I want to talk to you. And again, I'm trying to hold it together. Okay. And she told me that since she had won the shot and discus, and she had decided that she was going to focus on the discus at that Olympics. And so she wasn't going to throw the shot. So she was going to let them know that she wasn't going to throw the shot, which would mean that the 4th place person, that's me, gets to move up and actually make the team. And I remember when she told me this, I just burst out into tears, and I was crying, and I was hugging her because no one had ever done anything like this. And not that she did it for me, I just happened to benefit from it. But there may have been some of that where she felt I deserved a chance. So the reason I think I actually made the Olympic team was because of karma. I feel like in every competition that I've done, I congratulate the winners. I'm always positive to the athletes. And I feel like that was sort of karma for me, that I got to live my dream as a result of what I was doing in the sport. So I guess my final lesson to you is to make sure you realize that the way you carry yourself and the way you treat people is important, because you never know how it's going to come back and help you. And with that, we are right at 30 minutes, and we are up at questions. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to our moderator to see where we go from here. See if there's any questions from the audience.
Well, Pam, thank you so much for that presentation. I did want to ask if anyone has any questions for Pam, you can fill it out in that Zoom group chat, and then I'll be happy to read it to Pam and the rest of the group so everyone can see it. I guess while people are submitting their questions, I do have one question for you of my own, Pam, which is when you were talking at the beginning of your presentation about not wanting to share, you going through the training for the Olympics. it just made me think about kind of, what's happening now, which there are, of course, throughout history, times of uncertainty. And I think a lot of our spring graduates are kind of, in that transition period already from, graduation to entering the job market, or just deciding if they want to continue to say a PhD career. And I just wondered, in times of uncertainty like this, if you could offer them, any words of encouragement, just starting from your own experience.
Yeah, sure. This sort of echoes some of the points I was making about making sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people and having mentors and coaches. Because I know for me, I did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And even when I graduated Stanford and I got my bachelor and master's in sociology, I didn't have a role of Pam wants to be this. I had no idea. So I started working at Oracle, which a lot of Stanford graduates do. And that's how I got into technology. I didn't take one technology class or computer class in college because it kind of scared me. But I want people to realize that you don't necessarily have to know exactly what you want to be now. And what you need to do is just find something that interests you. And if you can get a job in that position, then go for it. But remain open, because at the time, again, I'm working in technology, not a technical person, don't have any understanding of the market, but I learned from being there. And then I got to the point where I'd been there for a while. And every time I tried to move out of technology, they would say, oh, you're in technology. And they just kind of kept me there. So at the time, I did not know what a project manager was. It was years later that I heard that, and then someone recommended me for that job. And that's how I sort of found my sweet spot in technology, from project manager to scrum manager, and now to scrum master, and then to an agile coach. So I would say that you've got to try to figure out what sits with you, what you really like. And if you don't, to just try a bunch of things. But for sure, if there are mentors or people you can lean on, if you have family or you have counselors who can help you figure it out, I would use every resource that you could to try. But to not be afraid, or not to even feel bad that you don't know, because I think I hit project management close to 30 in my years. And that's far from college, knowing what I was going to be. So don't be discouraged, and know that, not everybody has it all laid out in front of them, that they try to figure it out as they go.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we do have a question for you, Pam. This is from Andrea. It seems everyone has low motivation days. How do you deal with low motivation days?
I try to pretend that it's not a low motivation day. Normally, it's one of those things where if you can get going, you start to feel better. I give my example of when I go to the gym. Many times people say, I don't want to work out, or I don't feel like it. But somehow, if you just get in the door, and maybe you walk on a treadmill and you start to see everybody else is working out, and maybe you're listening to the song you want to hear, or there's something on TV you can watch, you start to feel better about it, and you start to get your motivation for what you need to get done. So I would say that even though you have those days, just do something. Get yourself in the arena where whatever it is you want to accomplish, you do. And maybe just say, okay, today I'm just going to get these 3 things done, set a goal, and try to get those done. But you'd be surprised how low motivation days can actually turn out into some pretty good days. At least that's how it works for me.
Okay, Pam, we have a question from Adam. What is your favorite day of the week?
Well, it's funny, when I was younger, because I'm a TV buff, I based my favorite day based on whether my favorite TV show was coming on at night, which I know seems a little odd. One of the things I've purposely tried to do is not be a person who can't wait till Friday, can't wait till the weekend, because every day I think is a gift. So I try to make every day great. I honestly think sometimes Mondays are good, because I've been home, I've been away from people I work with. So Monday, you get to come in, you get to see how everyone's doing, or you get to communicate with them, check in, and then kind of make those relationships grow and get things done together. So If you push me, I would say I like Mondays, which most people really don't like. And that might be why I choose it, because it's that day where I feel like maybe I can give some positivity out to the folks who aren't feeling so great on a Monday and help improve their day.
Okay, Pam, I also have another question for you, which is
Okay.
when you were mentioning, attempting to, squash that fear gremlin. What are some beginning steps to, quieting that voice of fear?
Well, the first thing you have to recognize is it's there, and realizing that it never goes away. Some days it's louder than others. And the biggest thing for me is realizing that only in the moments where I truly grow is when I've pushed myself to do something I don't want to do, or I'm scared, or I know is going to take me out of my comfort zone. So I try to ask myself, okay, you said you wanted to grow. To grow, you have to do this. So what's it going to be? Are you going to sit back and be comfortable? Or are you going to push yourself? And even if you push yourself and try something and you fail, there's still a lesson in that. So I know Nigel and I, we used to joke talking about the gremlins. And I use the term from Taylor Swift's song, I think it's Shake It Off, where she talks about haters are going to hate, HGH. I post a lot on LinkedIn, and you'll see me using the HGH because every time I put something out there, I know I run the risk of people coming back and saying something or judge me. And then I just realized, you know what? It's not for them. It's for the other people who it could do some good. So quieting the gremlins is something you have to work with every day, and just try to take small steps to get past whatever it is that's holding you back.
Oh, thank you, Pam. We do have one final question before we
Charlie.
will discussion. Yes, from Charlie.
I know Charlie.
Great, great. I think sometimes people feel overloaded by filling in the forms and don't like to write down their plans or plan for anything for that matter. Any advice on how to begin those planning stages?
I think just about every goal setting activity requests that you put it in writing. There's something about putting pen to paper that makes it real. It's very easy to keep stuff in our head and say we're working on things, but once you actually put it down, there's a level of accountability. And then once you actually share it with others, the accountability grows exponentially. And for me, that's the thing that pulled me forward. If this was just a goal I was doing and I didn't really have a coach or people weren't aware, it's easy to hide and not do it. We do that every day. But once you start sharing it with people and asking them to hold you accountable, that's the thing that gets you. And I understand it's work with the Harada Method, but I mean, I'm investing in me. So if you can't invest in you, then why even bother? I don't let a little work scare you from actually making a big jump and a big change in your life.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like we do have a question from Professor John
Thanks,
Turner.
Charlie.
Okay. Pam, you've competed in one of the highest levels of competition on a global stage. How do you deal with that competition?
That's a good question. Well, after a while, you get used to it, and you have to pretend that you don't see the crowd that's sitting there. I know coaches have worked with me where you just tell yourself, it's just another meet. It's just another competition. You've been doing this for X number of years. So you've just got to kind of put one foot in front of the other. And you can look around and see the people around you are competing and doing well. That's why you're there. So you have to do the same thing. So sometimes setting up a routine. I had a routine when I competed where I didn't like to eat the day of my competition. I don't know, there was something weird about it. I just didn't want anything in my stomach. And for days when I competed at, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that's tough because you're hungry. But for me, setting that routine and then mentally preparing, working with sports coaches, psychologists to get me in the right frame of mind so that everything else just kind of went like clockwork made a difference. But it takes concerted effort and work to do that. People don't just show up and not get nervous and do their best in a competition. You actually really have to work on it. But if you do work on it, then hopefully you'll be able to achieve some level of success.
Okay, thank you so much, Pam. We appreciate it. We would love to have you back on campus when we, of course, are having visitors back.
Sure.
Appreciate your time, and thanks to John Turner for inviting you. We just appreciate everything that you had to say and keeping this Discovery series going. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Don't forget to email me.
Yes, and we will make sure that we put all your contact information available with the postings. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right.
Take care,
Take care,
everybody.
everyone.